Today I'm going to be reading the first few pages of Looking for Alaska, which is a book that has been one of my favorite books since I first read it when I was 12. I have two copies, this one that I've had for forever, and then this one that is a special 10th anniversary edition that's fancy and hardcover. So I'll be reading from this one. An interesting thing about this book is that it's not told in chapters. It's structured in terms of days before and after a certain event happens in the book. So the first section is titled 136 Days Before. The week before I left my family in Florida and the rest of my minor life to go to boarding school in Alabama, my mother insisted on throwing me a going away party. To say that I had low expectations would be to underestimate the matter dramatically. Although I was more or less forced to invite all my school friends, i.e. the ragtag bunch of drama people and English geeks I sat with by social necessity in the cavernous cafeteria of my public school, I knew they wouldn't come. Still, my mother persevered, awash in the delusion that I had kept my popularity secret from her all these years. She cooked a small mountain of artichoke dip. She festooned our living room in green and yellow streamers, the colors of my new school. She bought 24 champagne poppers and placed them around the edge of our coffee table. And when that final Friday came, when my packing was mostly done, she sat with my dad and me on the living room couch at 11:56 p.m. and patiently awaited the arrival of the goodbye to Miles cavalry. Said cavalry consisted of exactly two people, Mary Lawson, a tiny blonde with rectangular glasses, and her chunky, to put it charitably, boyfriend Will. "Hey, Miles," Mary said as she sat down. "Hey," I said. "How was your summer?" Will asked. "Okay. Yours?" "Good. We did Jesus Christ Superstar. I helped with the sets. Mary did lights," Will said. "That's cool." I nodded knowingly, and that about exhausted our conversational topics. I might have asked a question about Jesus Christ Superstar, except that 1, I didn't know what it was, and 2, I didn't care to learn, and 3, I never really excelled at small talk. My mom, however, can talk small for hours, and so she extended the awkwardness by asking them about their rehearsal schedule and how the show had gone and whether it was a success. "I guess it was," Mary said. "A lot of people came, I guess." Mary was the sort of person to guess a lot. Finally, Will said, "Well, we just dropped by to say goodbye. I've got to get Mary home by 6. Have fun at boarding school, Miles." "Thanks," I answered, relieved. The only thing worse than having a party that no one attends is having a party attended only by two vastly, deeply uninteresting people. They left, and so I sat with my parents and stared at the blank TV and wanted to turn it on, but knew I shouldn't. I could feel them both looking at me, waiting for me to burst into tears or something, as if I hadn't known all along that it would go precisely like this. But I had known. I could feel their pity as they scooped artichoke dip with chips intended for my imaginary friends, but they needed more pity than I did. I wasn't disappointed. My expectations had been met. "Is this why you want to leave, Miles?" Mom asked. I mulled it over for a moment, careful not to look at her. No," I said. "Well, why then?" she asked. This was not the first time she had posed the question. Mom was not particularly keen on letting me go to boarding school and made no secret of it. "Because of me?" my dad asked. He had attended Culver Creek, the same boarding school to which I was headed, as had both of his brothers and all of their kids. I think he liked the idea of me following in his footsteps. My uncles had told me stories about how famous my dad had been on campus for having simultaneously raised hell and aced all of his classes. That sounded like a better life than the one I had in Florida. But no, it wasn't because of Dad. Not exactly. "Hold on," I said. I went into Dad's study and found his biography of Francais Rabelais. I butchered that name. I like reading biographies of writers, even if I'd never read any of their actual writing. I flipped to the back and found the highlighted quote. "Never use a highlighter in my books," my dad had told me 1,000 times. But how else are you supposed to find what you're looking for? "So this guy," I said, standing in the doorway of the living room. "He was his poet, and his last words were, 'I go to seek a great perhaps.' That's why I'm going. So I don't have to wait until I die to start seeking a great perhaps." And that quieted them. I was after a great perhaps, and they knew as well as I did that I wasn't going to find it with the likes of Will and Mary. I sat back down on the couch between my mom and my dad, and my dad put his arm around me, and we stayed there like that, quiet on the couch together for a long time, till it seemed okay to turn on the TV, and then we ate artichoke dip and watched the History Channel, and as going away parties go, it certainly could have been worse. 128 days before. Florida was plenty hot, certainly, and humid too. Hot enough that your clothes stuck to you like Scotch tape and sweat dripped like tears from your forehead into your eyes. But it was only hot outside, and generally I only went outside to walk from one air-conditioned location to another. This did not prepare me for the unique sort of heat that one encounters 15 miles south of Birmingham, Alabama, at Culver Creek Preparatory School. My parents' SUV was parked in the grass just a few feet outside my dorm room, room 43, but each time I took those few steps to and from the car to unload what now seemed like far too much stuff, the sun burned through my clothes and into my skin with a vicious ferocity that made me genuinely fear hellfire. Between Mom and Dad and me, it only took a few minutes to unload the car, but my unair-conditioned dorm room, although blessedly out of the sunshine, was only modestly cooler. The room surprised me. I'd pictured plush carpet, wood-paneled walls, Victorian furniture. Aside from one luxury, a private bathroom, I got a box. With cinder block walls coated thick with layers of white paint and a green and white checkered linoleum floor, the place looked more like a hospital than the dorm room of my fantasies. A bunk bed of unfinished wood and vinyl mattresses was pushed against the room's back window. The desk and dressers and bookshelves were all attached to the walls in order to prevent creative floor planning. And no air conditioning. I sat on the lower bunk while Mom opened the trunk, grabbed a stack of biographies my dad had agreed to part with, and placed them on the bookshelves. "I can unpack, Mom," I said. My dad stood. He was ready to go. "Let me at least make your bed," Mom said. "No, really, I can do it. It's okay. Because you simply cannot draw these things out forever. At some point, you just pull off the Band-Aid and it hurts, but then it's over and you're relieved." "God will miss you," Mom said suddenly, stepping through the minefield of suitcases to get to the bed. I stood and hugged her. My dad walked over too, and we formed a sort of huddle. It was too hot and we were too sweaty for the hug to last terribly long. I knew I ought to cry, but I lived with my parents for 16 years, and a trial separation seemed overdue. "Don't worry," I smiled. "I's gonna learn how to talk right Southern," Mom laughed. "Don't do anything stupid," my dad said. "Okay." No drugs, no drinking, no cigarettes. As an alumnus of Culver Creek, he had done the things I had only heard about, the secret parties, streaking through hayfields. He had whined about how it was all boys back then, drugs, drinking, and cigarettes. It had taken him a while to kick smoking, but his badass days were now well behind him. "I love you," they both blurted out simultaneously. It needed to be said, but the words made the whole thing horribly uncomfortable, like watching your grandparents kiss. "I love you too. I'll call every Sunday." Our rooms had no phone lines, but my parents had requested I be placed in a room near one of Culver Creek's 5 payphones. They hugged me again, Mom, then Dad, and it was over. Out the back window, I watched them drive off the winding road off campus. I should have felt a gooey, sentimental sadness, perhaps, but mostly I just wanted to cool off. So I grabbed one of the desk chairs and sat down outside my door in the shade of the overhanging eaves, waiting for a breeze that never arrived. The outside sat as still and oppressive as the air inside. I stared out over my new digs. 6 one-story buildings, each with 16 dorm rooms, were arranged in a hexagram around a large circle of grass. It looked like an oversized old motel. Everywhere, boys and girls hugged and smiled and walked together. I vaguely hoped that someone would come up and talk to me. I imagined the conversation. "Hey, is this your first year?" Yeah, I'm from Florida." "That's cool, so you're used to the heat." "I wouldn't be used to this heat if I were from Hades," I joke. I'd make a good first impression. "Oh, he's funny. That guy Miles is a riot." That didn't happen, of course. Things never happen like I imagined them. I promise it gets more interesting after this.